good find. And yeah, it's hard to justify doing a home inspection on a brand new home sort of thing, right? You just make the assumption, well, everything looks awesome. I'm assuming everything else is awesome. But
Yeah.
obviously
No,
that's not the case, right? You've got to double
no,
check.
and
You got to do your due
yeah,
diligence, right?
and I always recommend new house, old house. You should always get one done. Like, and we like to talk about earlier, like our reports are like an operation manual. So it's about, like you mentioned, about learning where everything on the shutoffs are, learning about everything, how everything functions. So yeah, it's not all about finding problems, but it's also about learning about the home, right?
Yeah.
What does everything operate? How does this work? How does this work? What does this do?
Now that home inspections are back, we dive into some of the key things buyers should be aware of when getting one done. Darin Deyong from A Buyer's Choice Home Inspections Durham region is on the podcast today to discuss what to look for, how to save money in the long run, and shares a few horror stories he's come across in his time as an inspector. Check it out and enjoy the Realest AMG's podcast. What's up, everybody? I am your host, Brandon Hebert from Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices, repping the Atlas Maverick Group. Welcome to the show, Darin. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't know Darin, maybe, Darin, you could give us your elevator pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it. It's always nice to get this opportunity to talk home inspections and why they're important now that they're sort of coming back. The last year or so, things have been coming back, which is kind of nice. Past that sort of craziness from 2021, where it was home inspections, where, what is a home
Awesome.
inspection? You couldn't get one in,
Yeah, it was like everybody,
right?
if you were smart, you did the home inspection before the offer night just to
Yeah.
make sure
Yeah.
you know what
Well,
you were doing, right?
yeah. Well, we were doing a lot of pre-offer, right? Advisory services, we call. We don't call them inspections because an inspection is really, it has, if you call it inspection, you're doing a report. These were not a report. It's more of a verbal. But buyers didn't have a lot of options. There were no options. You either cross your fingers and hope that you're buying a home and everything's great, and you don't find out afterwards that you got problems and things going on. So the pre-offer was just sort of targeted to sort of look at the five main areas of the home, right? To look at, to at least give the buyer some comfort, some knowledge, and stuff that could potentially be costly down the road. So kind of look at those main items. That's kind of why it was designed. So that's kind of it was very, very popular because that was the only choice. Or you did it after you closed, and again, pray to God that nothing crazy comes up afterwards, right?
Yeah, just hope
So
that, at least you
yeah,
know what you're getting into and you can kind of
yeah.
budget accordingly.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So anyway, back to their question. Sorry, got a little off track there. So yeah, my name is Darin Deyong from a Buyer's Choice Home Inspections in the Durham region. I also serve the surrounding areas in the GTA and the GTA East as well. Um, been doing this for about 2 years now. So yeah, I do full home inspections, the pre-offers like we just touched on. Do pre-listing inspections as well for the seller. That's pretty popular as well. And do radon testing as part of my inspections as well. Doing this for about 2 years, and yeah, at the end of the day, home inspections are about buyers. It's not about passing or failing a home. It's more about educating the buyer, having them understand so they can make the best informed decision moving forward. So if they
Yeah.
have all the knowledge they need, they can now budget accordingly. Is the house for them? Maybe it's not. Every buyer has a different tolerance, but I'm there just to provide all the information and the facts they need. So now they're educated and they can make that decision. That's kind of what I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, then in what are some of the most common like red flags that you see when you're doing a home inspection, or at least that the buyer should be aware of? Like you said, the five main points. What are those?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'll talk about some areas. So I'll talk about, well, I'll tell you what, I'll talk about some areas that I know that come up a lot, and that some areas that may not, these deceiving areas, areas that not everybody pays a lot of attention to, but could create a problem if it's not rectified or at least looked at. So grading is a big one. I talk about all the time. Grading issues around the house where you want your grading to go on a negative slope away from your foundation, not towards a foundation. So, and sometimes there's a lot of upkeep. You got to make sure that the gradings, because it's in the winter here, if everything, starts to
Melts.
move and shift a bit, right? Through the freeze thaw through the wintertime. So things start to move, especially if you have interlock stone, and if you have pavers around your house, they like to move and settle as well. So grading and pooling of water. I always say foundations aren't boats. They're not meant to sit and hold water, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure, and everything contributes from the downspouts, the water shedding off the roof, down the downspouts onto the ground. They got to have extensions to make sure that flows the water away from the foundation, and then the whole grading itself around, because all that pooling of water, eventually, if it's not taken care of and it's sitting there, it will eventually somehow make its way
Make
in.
its
I
way
mean,
in. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you got old block foundations that are just mortar and brick. I mean, they're going to deteriorate over time. Even, poured concrete, there are a lot of imperfections in poor concrete foundations. So little minor hairline cracks eventually, you know, water is evil, right? Water will always somehow find its way in. So that's a big thing to pay attention to, is grading,
That's
and pooling of water.
that's
So
gonna come this spring, right? We're
yeah,
we're mid-March. It's all gonna happen in the next month or so that we're gonna start seeing the pooling of water, right? So
absolutely. And
hopefully
that's
nobody's dealing with any floods or seepage and leakage.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, this is a time that if you do have something, this is the time you're going to find out, because in the
Yeah.
wintertime, everything's frozen. So it's really hard to detect if you had a leak because the ground is hard. So the spring thaw, unfortunately, is kind of the time that if you're going to have it, that's always the time of year, right? Where you're going to see it.
Good
So
time to buy and find out if you've got, like, if you do a home inspection, because
yes,
that's the time that you're going to find out. If you go
y-
on your home inspection on a
yeah,
rainy day, that's
yeah,
probably the best opportunity to find out if you've got any leakage problems, right?
yeah. No, it's funny. And raining is funny because raining, yeah, it's not very comfortable when I'm doing the inspection outside when it's raining. But on the other hand, you're right. It is the best day to find out. If there is going to be something, chances are leaky eaves troughs. You're going to find out. You don't know if they're leaking unless it's raining hard as well. So, and then if you have some grading, you're not sure if it's graded well. What if you got water pooling in the area? You're going to see that as well on a rainy day, right? So,
Yeah.
um, another one is the attic. So the attic, of course, most buyers aren't going to get into the attic. Most people don't ever get into the attic. Let's be honest, right? Nobody ever really
No,
loves the
nobody
attic.
goes in
That's
the attic.
no, nobody goes in there. That's my job. That's what I do. So, but there's a lot of things going on in attics that buyers would never be aware of. There's one area where it's not visible. Most people are not going up there. Yeah, you can see the grade, you can see the foundation, you can see stuff like that, but the attic is up there. It's no one ever sees that. So that's why it's important. That's why I'm here to detect what's going on there. I see a lot of mold and moisture issues in the attic. Number one contributor is the bathroom vent. I see the bathroom vent always disconnected or not hooked up, going to the exterior. Most of them will go up out the roof. Some go through the siding or the soffit, but majority of the time they go up through the roof. And a lot of times the renovations were going on, or if they just installed, let's say, a bathroom fan because they wanted to improve the ventilation, improve to get that moisture out. They don't even, it doesn't do any purpose if it's not going outside, right?
Yeah, just goes right into the attic.
Yeah, and that's all that warm moisture. If you use the fan a lot, which you should, you're gonna see a lot of moisture and mold will build up there if that continues to stay like that. So that's one, so the attic and it's got to breathe. Attics have to breathe properly, right? You got enough insulation. You got to allow air to get in, take the warm air out the roof. It's all designed as one system. So air comes in from the soffits, grabs that warm air that gets in there, takes it out the roof vents. And if that's not happening, the warm air is just circulating inside the attic, and that's creating moisture. A lot of in the wintertime, what happens is there's attic frost. So all the warm air gets up and hits that cold sheathing on the attic. That creates attic frost, and that melts, and that becomes moisture. And if that keeps happening over and over again, right, you're going to
Mold.
create problems.
Mold could be an issue, right? Or
Yeah,
one of the tidbits I found, like, when I've been, like, with home inspectors, is that in the wintertime, if all the neighbors have snow on the roof and the one that you're inspecting doesn't really have snow on the roof, or there's patches, it means the roof needs attention because hot air is leaking through it, right? So you
right.
might have hot air going into there, but then you also have it leaking out, not necessarily the vents, but through the actual roof.
Yeah, and that usually happens to lack of, the amount of heat probably that's going through the house and the lack of insulation in the attic. So minimal insulation is now allowing the warm air to get up, hitting it and melting the snow. And that's where ice damming comes into effect, right? So you see ice damming is the buildup of ice around the eaves trough, around the roof edge. And that is that warm air getting through, melting that snow underneath, and it's rolling down to the roof edge and refreezing. So if you ever see big patches of ice along the eaves and then starts to icicles, you've got ice damming going on.
Now try.
How about now?
There we go.
Better? That was
Yeah,
weird.
a little technical difficulties. I don't know.
Okay. Computers.
Yeah, it's supposed to be your friend. No.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So ice damming. So that's another problem that can happen is ice damming is built up of ice around the roof edge. All that water's, rolling down the roof from that warm air that's melting it, and it's refreezing itself. And then you can get moisture underneath the shingles into the roof structure, and then maybe even down the walls. So that's why insulation is very important, back to your point. is extremely important in the attic, having enough to, you want, and energy costs, right? So you're losing all the warm air. Now you're spending more money on fuel to heat your house. So insulation in the attic is very, very, is very important.
Wow.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, that it all kind of is connecting, right? Like,
Yeah.
attic, roof, eaves.
Yeah.
What
Yes.
what are some of the other ones?
Yeah. So, high level of moisture, more specifically crawl spaces, is a big thing. Again, places people don't want to get to. But in the crawl space, most crawl spaces are, it's earth and gravel, right? For the most part. Sometimes you get some clean ones that are sort of inside kind of crawl spaces, you call them, but main crawl spaces are houses that don't have basements. They'll have crawl space, right?
Yeah.
So a
You
lot
see
of
a
times
lot
they
of
have
that in
HVAC systems
Oshawa?
in. I see sometimes, yeah. I see not too many, but I do a lot of inspections out in the Kawartha Lakes area in Peterborough, so you see quite a few,
Okay.
crawl spaces out that way.
Yeah.
A few in some old areas of Oshawa, you may see a few here and there, but not too many. But more in the outskirts. I do a lot in the other areas as well. So I don't
Okay.
do a ton of crawl spaces, but again, that groundwater comes up, right? So and then usually have some pips down there, and that water builds up, and that moisture gets up. You only got about 3 feet in those crawl spaces, so that moisture can do damage, rotting on the structure underneath. So you got to have vapor barrier. Vapor barrier is like a 6 mil plastic that helps a barrier between the water and the ground and up, so it helps to keep. So if it is, you do have some water, or you got some moisture underneath there, it's keeping it away and keeping it constrained, right? You got to have the plastic that kind of goes down up the foundation, kind of along, taped all areas, so it prevents all that moisture from getting up.
Coming in.
In most crawl spaces, I don't see that. You know,
No,
so
nobody wants to go down there.
no, nobody wants to go down there, right? Nobody. The roof and the crawl space. Nobody wants to go down there. That's it. Exactly it. And I guess one last thing is the roof. I mean, I always tell buyers, look at the roof when you're walking up to the house. Look at the roof and look at the condition, because if it's missing a lot of shingles, if it's cupping, if it's curling, that could lead to more problems if not taken care of, right? So that's how roof leaks start, right? When you let your roof go, next year, right? And then eventually, that could cause other problems.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, we kind of covered the roof, but yeah, like I guess that kind of leads
Yeah.
into like the next thing is like first time home buyers or anybody really, they should be looking at all of these things to make sure that they're saving money in the long run, right?
Yeah,
Like if
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
how like yeah, what are some of those things that you should be looking for to save money in the long run?
Sure. So again, roof. We'll go back to the roof again. Again, like to make sure the roof, and make sure if it's past its life expectancy, change it. Don't want to risk causing any more issues than you really want. Um, Another one is your HVAC systems. Some of them are getting older. You want to make sure you maintain them. You get them service on an annual basis. Change that filter. The most important thing. You want to breathe air, but you also don't want to do extra damage to your furnace either, right? Having all that dirt and debris flowing through. So make sure there is a filter. That there is
Yeah,
a filter. Make sure it's changed on a regular basis, at least every 3 months,
I was gonna say
and get them
quarterly.
serviced. Yeah, quarterly, at least quarterly. Even the winter time, I even say monthly. You're using the furnace a lot during the winter time, so you got a lot more going through. So you may even want to change those every 4 to 6 weeks during the winter time, and then everything else. I usually I change mine at the beginning of every season. Um, I use myself a nice calendar reminder, so I remind myself that it's got to be done at the beginning of every season.
It's a good
So,
idea. You
yeah,
can buy those like
yeah, no,
Costco
for sure.
packs or Amazon packs that are like 12. So you just have them next to the pull them in, put them out, the
Yeah,
buy them in bulk so
yeah,
that you don't have to go find them sort of thing, right? It's a good
yeah.
option.
There's so many different kinds. There's special ones for allergies. There's special ones for all different things. So, yeah, you can buy like a 3 pack or 6 pack or whatever. You got a bunch on hand, and that way you don't have to worry about it. You just go down every 3 months and put one in. And getting an annual service. I mean, as these things get older, they're not as viable as they were when they were new. So to keep them energy efficient, keep them viable, you want to get them service on a regular basis. You don't want to break down. And if you want to, if it is getting to that age, your HVAC technician is going to tell you, and then you'll know, oh, maybe I should get a new one rather than leaving it and have it break down in November or December when it's getting cold. And now you have you're going to be cold. You're going to have some time where you're not going to be heat in the house, and now you have an unexpected expense, right, coming at you that you weren't aware of. So knowing that ahead of time will help for sure. Um, Again, attic condition as well. I mean, insulation level is very important. You're losing a lot of heat. You don't realize how much money you'd be spending on heat if you don't have very good, especially in old houses. Old houses in Toronto, even in South Oshawa, that back in the building, they didn't really think about energy efficiency and having lots of insulation. So they don't have a ton of insulation. So you're losing a lot of heat up through there. Be amazed. Even the attic hatch. The attic hatch has to be insulated and sealed with weather stripping, right? To help keep it. Because all the warm air, almost like water, will always find its way through. So you want to make sure that's sealed and insulated to help keep it in the home where you want it, basically. And then I guess, just to save money, like overall maintenance. I mean, you got to do annual maintenance. Owning a home is a full-time job, I like to say, right? You've constantly got to do things. So you're keeping your caulking up to date, making sure it's all sealed. There's no, moisture entry points or energy inefficiencies coming through the cracks around the windows, your vents, your bathroom vents, and your dryer vents on the exterior, making sure they're caulked. And a lot of times those flaps get broken, they fly off. So you want to make sure you get those fixed. That'll allow a lot of air from the outside and moisture in from the outside as well. So maintenance in the long run will help keep your home running in efficiency, healthy, right? And all those together. It's what I call the hidden costs, right? But overall, it actually saves you money in the long run if you keep all those things intact and taken care of, basically. I could talk about foundation. Foundation cracks are it's such a big area of foundation cracks. There's so many different types, but your general ones are your vertical cracks, small ones, hairline cracks you see in foundations, which is typical from the curing process of concrete. But you just want to make sure you seal them up. Most of those cracks, you just got to seal them up and just monitor them, make sure they don't get wider, right? So, but that's one way you can help just patch those up, prevent moisture getting inside.
Can you, like, I've seen crack foundation specialists like pump like a foam inside of these cracks, and it's supposed to essentially seal it and repair it. Is that a great solution for anybody who does have foundation cracks?
Yeah, so that'll be foundation cracks from the interior. So a lot of times they'll be So if they're wide, again, it could be just from the curing of concrete, but concrete is funny when it cures, and when they're pouring concrete in the wintertime, and they don't use enough heat, it could create different types of cracks, right? So depending on where on how they poured it. And so so if they're a little wider cracks, what they'll do what's called epoxy injection. So it's actually epoxy that they use. And they put like plastic nipples in, about, depending how big it is, let's say about a 4-foot crack, they'll put like 8 or 10 of them in, and then they shoot epoxy in through there, and then it just seeps all in and seals it right up. And then they'll put a parging over on top of it to help seal it. Very popular. I've dealt with a home builder my past life back in Bowmanville, and they had a lot of cracking foundations where that was a 2 guys full-time job. That's all they did was go around all these new homes that had these brand new foundations and did epoxy injections. That's how they sealed it up. But it works.
Yeah.
But it's very, very, it's very, very popular for sure.
Okay, so how can buyers like ensure that they get the most accurate and comprehensive home inspection possible?
Okay,
Call you.
Call question. Next question. It's exactly it. I took the words right out of my mouth. No, I mean, everyone's going to call around interviewing home inspectors, right? So, you want to feel comfortable who you're talking to, and you want to make sure you get the right information. Ask what the process is, what they do, what do they inspect. Just like anything, there's home inspectors are different, right? I mean, we all, for the most part, have the same knowledge, but everyone approaches different things. They may have different add-on values. They may have, maybe the radon, maybe like infrared scanning might be extra, moisture detection might be extra. There might be inspectors that kind of have different ranges and charge extra for all these extra, right, add-ons. So it's very important to kind of, you want to talk and ask what's included. Do a little bit of research of what a home inspection should include, and then when you call around, ask what's included. Because I include moisture detection, infrared scanning, and presence radon tests in all my inspections. But some guys might charge that extra, right? So it's nice to just know that ahead of time what's all included and what they inspect. You want to make sure they're inspecting everything. The home inspection is top to bottom, in and out, right? It's a full 2.5, 3 hours, and you're checking, everything you can, obviously, in those 2.5, 3 hours. So you want to make sure that they are inspecting everything. So that's very important. And read the report. Make sure you read the report in full. Like ours are very well laid out, where it's got the summary, the most important items, You keep your to-do list, your things you don't want to lose sight of is kind of up in the summary section. And then you've got the rest of the report, which is minor repairs and maintenance and stuff. But you want to make sure you read through the whole report and have a good understanding of it as well.
Yeah.
And ask
Yeah.
questions.
When your buyers go on home inspections with you, you kind of also take them through the functionality of the home, like what does what and why it's important to do what when you're doing it, sort of thing, right? Because there's first-time home buyers, there's people who've owned homes, there's all sorts of different types of homes and how they operate. There's all sorts of different furnaces, and how they all function together is really important to know. So it's just a recommendation, but buyers should go on the home inspection with you at the same time, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always encourage them to come along. It's just nice to know, yeah, everything's in the report, but it's nice to be there as well, present, have understanding and ask all the questions you need to ask so they have a better understanding. But yeah, how the furnaces work. Is it natural gas? Is it propane? Maybe it's oil if you're going way back or some odd head, but it's nice to know what you're up against, right? Where your water shut off, if it's well and septic, where the leach field is, where the septic tanks are, where the wellhead is. So it's nice to know where all those things are. And where you're shut off your exterior hose bibs, right? Where that is. A lot of times people have them hidden. Sometimes even it's hard for me to find them sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Especially in finished basements, they usually have access panels and you kind of have to look for it. Most times they're in the unfinished area, but not all the time. So it's nice to know where all your shut off valves are, your main water shut off, and if it's well and septic, so where all that information is. And like you said, the type of furnace and the electrical panel, how many amp service you have. Because then you can know, okay, well, I only have a 200 amp service. It's pretty full. I want to put a hot tub. I may want to put a pool. Well, maybe now I should probably upgrade to a 200 amp service, right?
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that ahead of time. So it's not unexpected down the road where, your electrician comes in. Sorry, you have to upgrade to a 200 amp service, right? So if you know that ahead of time, I always usually have the conversation, ask, what do you plan to do in the future, right? I mean, it's pretty full now. If you want to put a hot tub, you want to buy an electric car, like everybody's buying nowadays,
Yep.
you may want to upgrade to 200 amp panel. So,
or even a second kitchen in the basement sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's becoming a big thing as well, having a secondary living space in the basement. So you need more
for sure.
electrical for that, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
And not going through this process could be fairly costly, right? Like a home inspection is limited, right? You can't put holes in walls and sort of things like that. And you've got only so many tools you can use. But like, if you don't even go through the process of getting a home inspection, like we were back in the day, you could end up with some major issues, which could be really costly to people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I know people like to think we can see through walls, but we can't see through walls. I've got an infrared scanner that we use to help detect some moisture, maybe some energy inefficiencies. But yeah, I mean, that's what home inspections are designed, is to catch as much as you can so you know what you're up against, get all the information you need moving forward. So you have about understanding that you need to budget for a new roof. Maybe you got to budget for a new furnace, whatever. So having that knowledge is huge, right? Going in. I mean, nobody wants surprises, right? Down the road. So
have you got any horror stories?
We don't have all day. No, I'll three things that kind of stick out to me. We're talking about grading. Okay, so I think it's out in Bewdley area about a year and a half ago. Went to a property in the wintertime and it was holding water around the foundation. Like, I mean, it was holding water. Like, it was like a pool around. And as you step way back and look at it, you can actually see the back sunk. So there's so much water around, and who knows how long it's been like that. The back part of the extension house was basically, it sunk down. So you actually walk in the area, the floor was like this.
Yeah.
So part of the foundation had actually sunk because of all that water sitting around there. Like, it was pretty bad. So we'll talk about crawl spaces. So I did one crawl space out in Brighton, and like, you go down there, most places like out in the country will have sub pumps, right? All the rainwater around the property drains into a sump pump. You got a pump, it pumps it out. This crawl space had a man-made. It wasn't even like, there's supposed to be a designated spot for a sump pump, right? It's about 2-3 feet deep. You got a pump. It's contained to one area. You got a lid on it. Helps keep the water into one spot, and right, water fills up. So there's a drain pipe going to the sump pump, drains out, or whatever, fills up, drains out, fills up, drains out. Well, this one only had, they just dug a hole and put a couple of submersible pumps. Submersible pumps are just regular electric pumps with a garden hose. You would use it. Construction guys use it to pump water out of pits or whatever, right?
Yep.
So they call it roofers pumps or whatever you want to call them. So you had two of those. So now you had to manually plug it in when you knew there's enough water. Like some pumps have float switches. They're automatic.
Yeah.
So as it fills up, float switch comes up, recognizes it, drains it, and then again comes up. So you don't have to do anything. This was manually done. So it was just dug out by hand. The water was all over the place. So we got water everywhere. It was rotting on the structure underneath because all that moisture down there. And the posts that were holding up the house were just 4x4 pieces of wood, but they were just in the dirt. So they're rotting at the bottom. Anytime you got, untreated wood and hitting the dirt, that's a recipe for disaster.
Moisture and
Right.
wood.
So yeah. So, I one of those ones where it's like, first time home buyers, you always feel, you never want to find this stuff, right? You want home buyers, you want to go in, they want to feel comfortable, they want to understand, okay, I got to fix a few things. No home is perfect anyway. I always make sure that's clear. No home is perfect. We're going to find some stuff. So always get that expectation that we're always going to find some stuff, right? But you never want to walk away. But I mean, I was almost one of those ones where I'm like thankful they didn't buy the house because it needed a lot of work and it was a lot of problems. And you just don't want to. You also don't want to see them buy something that, that could be, a money pit down the road. Like it needed a lot of work. And who knows? Maybe if it was down the hand, if it was a contractor who was buying that, he might not care because he's gonna whatever, right, or repair it.
Yeah.
But if it's your first time home, you want to live there, that you want it to be safe. That's important too, right? You want to make sure the home is safe too as well. So one last one I will just mention. This one sticks in my head because I can't believe it. So in Leaside area, like East Toronto, brand new old house was brandly renovated, like to the studs, and it was beautifully done. Like you walk around, you start opening doors, and there's high-end appliances. You can tell the craftsmanship was really well done. You start looking at the floor and the baseboard and the ceiling. You can tell that it was very good construction all the way from bottom up, and everything was pretty good. Not much, a couple minor things. There's, like I said, beautifully done. It was a gorgeous house, like $2 million house in Leaside. You get up into the attic, and I go up into the attic. It's one of those ones where I had to kind of like do a second take. There was no insulation, zero insulation in the attic, not even a speck. Like it was nothing. And so I had to come down. So yeah, so turns out, I guess the guy was supposed to come, and he assumed he came, and then just assumed it was done. Right? He just assumed it was done. It never did. So thankfully, 2 days later, the guy came in and filled it up. They called me back, no problem. Went back just to double check, and it was all good. But I bring this up because I asked the buyer, and the buyer said, I asked him, would you have ever gone up there? Like, and no, of course, it's a young couple. They're from England, first time home. They don't know much about homes, right? Which most home buyers don't know a lot about houses, which is fine. That's why they're buying a house, to learn about it. But they would never go in the attic. She told me I would never gone up there. So, fast forward years from now. So if that was never caught and we never did a home inspection, all that warm air right into the attic. And we talked about this earlier, right, Brandon? We talked about moisture, attic frost, like the problems that attic would have been in 5 years' time, because they just did that not even a year ago. So it was brand new, not enough time to know if there'd be issues yet, right?
Yeah.
So 5 years down the road, I mean, the problems, the money they would have lost losing heat, the damage that could have, I mean, it's one of those things where, without a home inspection, they never would have known.
Good find. And yeah, it's hard to justify doing a home inspection on a brand new home sort of thing, right? You just make the assumption, well, everything looks awesome, I'm assuming everything else is awesome. But obviously that's not the case, right? You've got to double check.
And
you got to do your due diligence, right?
And I always recommend new house, old house. You should always get one done. And we'd like to talk about earlier, like our reports are like an operation manual. So it's about, like you mentioned, about learning where everything on the shutoffs are, learning about everything, how everything functions. So yeah, it's not all about finding problems, but it's also about learning about the home, right? Yeah. What does everything operate? How does this work? How does this work? What does this do? And what kind of service do I have? Is the furnace good? Is everything working fine? You never know. New houses built, mistakes happen, right? You never know. I mean, there's tons of trades when they're building these new houses that mistakes happen, right? It's not, maybe it wasn't meaningful or it wasn't, malicious or whatnot, but things get forgotten. There's so many people in and out of these houses, trades over trades over trades, that things get forgotten. So it's just an extra comfort level, right? And just making sure, you're spending $1 million in this house, spend the extra $500 and change on an inspection, make sure it's good, understand how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Well, that was awesome. Tons of really great information. I really appreciate that, Darin. For our guests who don't know where to find you, where can we find you?
Yeah, sure. So, on my website, buyerschoice.com/Durham. My email, Darin.Deyong@abuyerschoice.com. And you can follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram is where I spend most of my time. Darin.inspects.abuyerschoice. Or you can just search my name, Darin Deyong, and you can find me there or on Facebook. And yeah, and for those of you, if anybody ever needs to reach out, my phone number is 905-441-6400. So feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help. Any questions anybody ever has, I'm always happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I really appreciate it. And until next time on the Realest AMG's podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe for more content like this, and go check out everything Darin's got to offer. Okay, I'll talk to you soon, and have an awesome day.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Darin. Ciao. The Realest AMG's podcast.